Welcome to NTD News. I'm Holly Kellum. Here are today's top stories. The FBI is investigating the motives of the Saudi shooter who attacked a naval base in Pensacola, Florida last week. Officials are working to determine whether he was working alone or as part of a network. To mark International Human Rights Day, hundreds of thousands of people are taking to the streets in Hong Kong. Encouraged by recent wins, pro-democracy advocates are demanding the freedoms they were promised before the city fell under communist rule. Our Hong Kong correspondent reports from the protest. Dozens are still unaccounted for after a powerful volcanic eruption killed at least 5 people on a tourist island off the New Zealand coast. The eruption sent ash 12,000 feet into the sky. Commuters in Paris struggle to find a way to get to work as the 5th day of pension strikes leaves train and bus commuters stranded. The FBI is looking into the motives of the Saudi shooter at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida. 3 people lost their lives and 8 more were injured in the attack.
On Sunday, an FBI special agent said the FBI started with an assumption that shooting was an act of terrorism.
I can tell you that we are looking very hard at uncovering his motive, and I would ask for patience so we can get this right.
The shooter has been identified as a 21-year-old second lieutenant in the Royal Saudi Air Force. He was attending flight training by the Naval Aviation Schools Command that operates at the Naval Air Station. The FBI is working to confirm whether the shooter was part of a larger network or acting alone. President Trump said Saturday that he received a phone call from Saudi leadership.
They are devastated by what took place in Pensacola, and I think they're going to help out the families very greatly.
The attack took place at dawn on Friday. The Saudi national is said to have begun firing a handgun inside a classroom. Authorities said a sheriff's deputy fatally shot him, ending the attack. At least 3 of the 8 people wounded are law enforcement officers. They are expected to recover. A Twitter account sharing the same name as the shooter was suspended by Twitter on Friday. An organization that tracks online Islamic extremism reported that a post from it hours before the shooting spoke of hatred toward Americans for crimes against Muslims. Whether the account was operated by the shooter has not yet been verified.
President Trump saying North Korea must denuclearize. He said yesterday leader Kim Jong-un risks losing everything if he resumes hostilities.
North Korea state media reported on Sunday it had carried out a very important test at its once dismantled rocket testing launch site. Trump responding on Twitter saying Kim Jong-un is too smart and has far too much to lose if he acts in a hostile way. This comes as talks of denuclearization between the U.S. and North Korea continue. Trump adds that if Kim interferes with the 2020 presidential election, the relationship could end. South Korea's defense ministry said they are keeping an eye on the area where the test took place.
한미는 긴밀한 공조하에 북한 동창리를
South Korea and the United States are closely monitoring North Korea's activities in major areas.
Missile experts said it appears likely the North Koreans conducted a static test of a rocket engine rather than a missile launch, which is usually quickly detected by neighboring South Korea and Japan.
이번에 엔진 시험
Since the site of the latest North Korean test is Dongchang-ru, it is most likely that the country conducted a missile engine test.
This comes amid dimming prospects for resuming negotiations, with the North threatening to seek a new way if it fails to get major U.S. concessions by the year's end.
Democratic presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren released information yesterday about her past legal work. It comes amid an intensifying dispute with one of Warren's rivals over transparency.
U.S. Democratic candidate Elizabeth Warren on Sunday revealed nearly $2 million in compensation for legal work going back to 1985. Warren's campaign put out the information following pressure from rival Pete Buttigieg. Fighting Wall Street greed has been a major theme of Warren's populist campaign. That may have opened her up to criticism that she herself has profited from the corporate world. She's already released around 10 years of tax returns, but recently, Buttigieg called on her to go back further and release more information. Warren hasn't taken it sitting down. She's demanded in her turn that Buttigieg share more details about his own past work at consulting giant McKinsey. On Sunday, Buttigieg's campaign said he's working on that. An opinion poll last week showed Warren's support is slumping nationally. She's come under attack for her plan to extend government-paid health care to all Americans, a plan that some candidates call too expensive. In some states, the 70-year-old is still running near the front of the pack of 15 Democrats. That includes Iowa, which kicks off the party's nominating contests early next year. But she'll have a tough challenger in Buttigieg. Recent opinion polls in Iowa show the mayor from South Bend, Indiana, has surged into the lead there. The two will have a chance to tussle over the issue of transparency in person when they meet on the debate stage in Los Angeles later this month.
An Iranian lawyer representing an American citizen who was recently released said his client was not tortured during his sentence. The man was released as part of a prisoner swap with Iran.
Xue Wang was released on Saturday after being detained in Iran for 3 years. In return, the U.S. released an Iranian university professor who was imprisoned for over a year on charges of violating sanctions. U.S. officials said Wang was examined by doctors in Germany, where he was expected to stay for several days. Wang's lawyer said Wang was not tortured during his sentence. On Saturday, both Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif and President Trump took to Twitter to praise the cooperation of everyone involved. Switzerland facilitated the swap. Wang is a Princeton University graduate student. He was convicted on spying charges and sentenced to 10 years in prison in Iran in 2017.
Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets in Hong Kong to mark International Human Rights Day this weekend. They're drawing attention to the erosion of their basic freedoms by the Chinese Communist regime. Our Hong Kong correspondent Paul Graney reports from the protest.
800,000 people marched in Hong Kong on Sunday, December 8th. The Stand with Hong Kong Walk With You All parade coincided with International Human Rights Day. Attendees used the event to highlight the erosion of Hong Kong's human rights since coming under communist rule in 1997.
They have chipped away, little by little, at the freedoms that Hong Kong is supposed to enjoy.
Eventgoers chanted slogans and held signs calling for these freedoms to be respected.
It's about time that we stand up for, these basic civil rights.
The parade lasted for 7 hours and ran from Victoria Park to Chatter Park. As dusk arrived, the route transformed into a river of lights. Some attendees held an unplanned, peaceful sit-in opposite riot police. One of the protesters' 5 demands is an independent investigation into police brutality during the protests.
Even though it's scary, but I think we still need to stay here to help to do what we can do now.
Over 5,000 protesters have been arrested since demonstrations began in June. They face up to 10 years in prison if sentenced. For frontline protesters, however, it's worth the risk when Hong Kong's freedoms are at stake.
But I think if Hong Kong lose, then even worse thing will happen to us.
It has already been 6 months since Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests began. However, judging from this weekend's turnout, it seems those involved still won't rest until they get their 5 demands. Paul Graney, NTD News, Hong Kong.
And also, in honor of International Human Rights Day, people practicing the spiritual faith Falun Gong held a rally in Hong Kong. They're drawing attention to an eradication campaign against the practice by the Chinese Communist Party that has lasted over 20 years.
Hundreds gathered at Edinburgh Place in central Hong Kong to observe Human Rights Day and expose the persecution of the spiritual practice Falun Gong in China, particularly the forced harvesting of organs. Kan Heng Chung, the chairman of the Hong Kong Association of Falun Dafa, said that more people realize the evilness of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, since the Hong Kong government began to suppress the protesters.
When in the last few months, under so much suppression and persecution by the CCP to the Hong Kong people, many people become they are very clear about the evilness of the CCP.
Several members of the Legislative Council of Hong Kong spoke at the rally. Wu Chi-wai, chairman of the Democratic Party and member of the Legislative Council, praised practitioners for their persistence and peaceful manner in the face of the harsh persecution. I also admire Falun Gong practitioners' courage to safeguard their belief. They have faced the same situation and they have perseverance on this since 2000. Because of this, many practitioners sacrificed their life for freedom. Wu said that freedom of belief and freedom of speech belong to everyone.
New Zealand police confirmed today at least 5 people have died after a volcano erupted. Up to 20 were injured and more than 24 are feared still missing.
New Zealand scrambled to save people caught in a deadly volcano eruption on Monday. One tourist posted video of his escape by boat sailing past a massive cloud of ash. Several people were injured while others have been reported missing in the eruption. Rescuers were racing to save those caught up in the event. At emergency sites on the mainland, people were wheeled off on stretchers. Officials have confirmed many were tourists visiting White Island. The volcano there is one of New Zealand's most active. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern voiced sympathy for the victims.
We know that there were a number of tourists on or around the island at the time, both New Zealanders and visitors from overseas. I know there will be a huge amount of concern and anxiety for those who have loved ones on or around the island at the time, and I can assure them police are doing everything they can.
An official from Royal Caribbean Cruises confirmed passengers from the Ovation of the Seas cruise ship were touring the island on Monday. When its volcano erupted, experts say it threw an ash plume 12,000 feet into the sky. However, the country's geological agency called the eruption short-lived and said there were no signs of an escalation.
Today, France went into a 5th day of strikes as workers and unions disable the capital's transport system. Unions say that government plans to overhaul the pension benefit scheme will leave pensioners worse off.
Commuters struggle to get to work as strikes go on, and National Rail Network warned travelers to stay home or use another way to get to work as many trains were cancelled.
When I wanted to take the train, it was full. I had to wait about an hour. Even after 1 hour of waiting, I had to take a train that was totally full.
Workers and unions are angry at the government's plan to overhaul the way pension benefits work by introducing a new point system. Workers say this will mean working for longer for less payout. Public Transport System RATP on Monday extended their strike to Friday against the changes. France Info website reported that a third of the city's bus depots were blocked due to the strike, and commuters were left waiting in the rain. According to RATP, 10 out of 16 metro lines were shut in the city, with only 2 lines operating during the day. Many commuters seem to support the strike, although some say they're irritated with the hassles the movement has caused.
I'm not against the strike as such, but I can't quite understand what they're asking for. I think that's quite a heavy strike that results in paralyzing a large portion of the Paris region, and I think it's all a bit complicated.
French President Emmanuel Macron summoned other top officials on Sunday night to find a strategy. The Prime Minister will present details of the government's plan on Wednesday.
Police have contained a fresh fire that broke out at a New Delhi building this morning. This after 43 people were killed and 64 injured in another fire there yesterday.
4 fire engines were rushed to the scene to control the small fire. This fire was caused by burning waste. The fire yesterday is believed to have been caused by an electrical short circuit. According to Indian media, the factory made school bags and toys. It was packed with combustible materials, causing it to burn for hours before being brought under control. Workers were sleeping in the factory when the fire broke out.
I don't know how those poor people were living in that building. There was a factory in the residential area. It's not allowed. The government and the administration should look at this problem. When it comes to the extremes, only then do they decide to take care of it.
Most people died due to suffocation. Narrow streets and congestion prevented fire trucks from accessing the building. Meanwhile, relatives of the victims say they have been kept in the dark and say the only information they are getting is from the news.
When we learned about the fire, we came to the hospital. It took around 5 or 6 hours to know if he is dead or alive. Initially, there was confusion. There was no information, nor was there any list.
Police have arrested the owner and manager of the factory, a spokesman said on Monday.
A thick haze engulfed Beijing today as an air quality index reported an uptick in fine particle air pollution. According to a Friday News Police, the Chinese Ministry of Ecology and Environment says even more of the country will soon be immersed in the smog. The department blames the worsening pollution on temperature inversion. The unusual atmospheric behavior causes temperatures to increase at higher altitudes and prevents air from mixing and circulating normally. The affected area covers 28 major cities. And up next, the security minister of France gives strong warnings about the dangers of Islamic extremism in the country and says he will create an intelligence unit designed to fight it. That and more when we return.
Oh, the show is phenomenal.
This is the best ever.
The way I look at Shenyun is this heavenly experience. I have never seen in my life so many amazing dancers, so many amazing and beautiful costumes.
Everything in the movements, in the smile, in the emotion, they could bring grace. I was taking my dish, I was really impressed.
The back extension, the leg extension, the rotation, absolute perfection. I just have chills, can you tell?
And the music is really extraordinary.
It sounded like it was pre-recorded, like it was so perfect. And I looked down and I could see all the orchestra playing. It was hard to believe it was actual live music. It was so perfect.
I like how it's not just beautiful with the colors and the music, but also it's funny because there's some storytelling elements to it.
I love every moment, especially the message of the Chinese ancient culture.
There's no other company in the United States that does this.
My heart was touched tonight. And every time I see actors perform with grace and dignity like that, it's a spiritual experience in itself.
I see God. I see the spirit of love and peace and the way that you would want the universe to be.
The energy that I got from watching is that internal spirit that I think that we all have that comes from our Creator. And I could feel that in my heart and in my soul.
I would tell my friends to see Shenyun because it is life-changing. And you'll walk away feeling positive and like you want to help the world be a better place.
Everyone should see something so pretty.
Our kids are 6 and 8 years old, and they enjoyed it and would like to come back to see it again.
I think it's for all people, and everyone needs to see it. Absolutely everyone.
It's not only about terror attacks. The French security minister is defining Islamism as a political project that tries to impose a substitute onto France's republic. Our France correspondent David Vives has the story.
French Security Minister Christophe Castaner met with the Paris police force on November 28th, warning about what he called the dangers of Islamism. The minister defined Islamism as a political project that tries to impose a substitute onto France's republic. Islamism is a political project that denies democracy. It plans to provide children with education and replace our public schools. It plans a parallel economy. It plans to push actions and organize itself as a whole system standing on its own. In his meeting with the head of the police force, Castaner said he will create special intelligence units that will map out Islamic networks. He's calling it an offensive against French Islamism. 4 years after the terrorist attack in Paris on November 13, 2015, in which 138 people died, the issue of Islamic extremism and domestic attacks is still relevant in France. Documentary maker François Margolin led a close study of a branch of Islamic extremism which promotes the deadly ideology driving a willingness to fight for the jihad or against enemies of Islam. According to his research, between 1 and 2 million Muslims in France are friendly towards ideas of Islamic extremism. It's a huge number and a hard one for any French security minister to deal with. According to Margolin, Salafism spreads in some suburbs in France where there is a majority of Muslims among local population. Before he resigned, the former security minister, Gerard Collomb, clearly said there could be an Islamic extremism mayor elected in France at the next elections. According to a recent poll by French Institut François d'Opinion Publique agency, 18% of French Muslims born in France believe Sharia, or Islamic law, should prevail in France. That number goes up to 46% for Muslim migrants. Sharia imposes on women the wearing of hijab or burqa, forbids alcohol and music performances. For French political think tank President Henri de Lesquen, hardline followers of Islam can't coexist with French law. For those Muslims, the French Republican laws aren't legitimate, but they will accept them nonetheless because the balance of power is not favorable to them. According to the security minister, France is still at high risk of being hit with new terrorist attacks.
Firefighters in the Australian state of New South Wales are racing against the clock and Mother Nature. First responders are trying to tamp down on a number of blazes before Tuesday, when temperatures in the region are expected to soar.
It could be a scene from Armageddon, but the Rural Fire Service in Southeast Australia is accustomed to flames like these. They work through the night in a relentless fight against the blaze. Local media reported that 90 fires are still burning into Monday. Conditions have recently eased, giving firefighters a chance to catch up and prepare for another incoming hot spell. They are carrying out tactical control burns ahead of time to try to manage the direction of the fire's spread. With all the fire comes smoke. A grey blanket covered the capital city on Sunday. Planes at Canberra Airport were barely visible in the haze. Back in New South Wales, temperatures are set to soar over 104 degrees Fahrenheit on Tuesday.
Up next, Russia gets banned from major world sports events for the next 4 years. The ban includes the next 2 Olympics and the World Cup. More on that after the break.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
In China, something can be illegal, but still in common practice. For example, bribery, or intellectual property theft, or Uber.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people and counting. I'm a little freaked out that many people have seen my face.
Hey, have you heard of China Uncensored? It's starring me.
It's more and more obvious that China is having a major influence on the U.S.
Hey, have you heard of China Uncensored? 中国揭秘. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the only show on TV or the internet. It will be the sole source of edutainment worldwide. Have you heard of China Uncensored?
Yeah, I have.
You actually have? He's heard of China Uncensored.
I love China Uncensored.
Our investigative reporters at the Epoch Times have spent 18 months uncovering the biggest political scandal in modern history. We connected the dots around Spygate, the actions by Obama-era officials against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Join me on Declassified as we bring you up-to-date developments on this unfolding scandal.
The World Anti-Doping Agency banned Russia for 4 years from the world's top sports events today, including the next Summer and Winter Olympics and the 2020 World Cup.
The World Anti-Doping Agency issues Russia a temporary ban from major world sports events because of Russian athletes' use of prohibited performance-enhancing drugs, a practice known as doping.
The consequences include the banning of Russia from the Olympics, Paralympics and World Championships run by all code signatories for 4 years.
The agency's executive committee concludes that Moscow planted fake evidence and deleted files linked to positive doping tests and laboratory data. Russia's sports minister blames the mishandled data on technical issues.
Russia was afforded every opportunity to get its house in order and to rejoin the global anti-doping community for the good of its athletes and for the integrity of sport. But it chose instead a different route.
Russian athletes who don't violate doping policies can still participate in these events, but they cannot do it under the Russian flag or national anthem. They can only participate as neutrals. Russia has been embroiled in doping scandals since a 2015 report uncovered mass doping in Russian athletics.
The busiest international airport in the world will soon start phasing out disposable plastics. The Dubai International Airport pledged in June to ban single-use plastics starting in January 2020.
In just over 3 weeks' time, single-use plastics like silverware, straws, and plastic bags will start to disappear from cafes, restaurants, and shops at the Dubai International Airport.
One of our intentions here is to build awareness, to change behavior, and to also change behavior, I believe, in managing businesses as well.
For example, Costa Coffee has committed to replacing its plastic cups with a 100% plant-based cup. This will be followed later next year by the introduction of a coffee cup lid made entirely of wood and paper fiber. It says it sells 2.6 million cups of coffee in Dubai airports a year.
And in 2020, we will be launching a new, more sustainable hot cup that includes a 100% plant-based lining.
95% of Dubai Airport's commercial partners have signed the pledge to stop using disposable plastics. Over 290 retail, food, and beverage shops have already started eliminating consumer-facing plastic in the past 6 months.
Coming up, Frozen 2 leads box office sales for the third straight weekend in the U.S. and is heading towards $1 billion in worldwide ticket sales. More on that after the break.
Every once in a while, something comes along, so masterful, it leaves you in awe. So inspiring, it changes your life. So beautiful, you wish it would never end. When that happens, it's something not to be missed. Shen Yun, an all-new production every year.
The first trailer for Wonder Woman 1984 starring Gal Gadot was released yesterday. This time she's gone from World War I to the 1980s. Her love interest Steve Trevor, played by Chris Pine, is back too, although when viewers last saw him in the first Wonder Woman film, he appeared to die when his plane exploded. 1984 also introduces two new villains, played by Kirsten Wiig as human-cat hybrid Cheetah and Pedro Pascal playing businessman Maxwell Lord. Wonder Woman 1984 opens June 5th of next year. And the first weekend in December is traditionally slow at the box office, and this year followed that pattern except for a certain animated musical.
A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood took 5th place with $5.2 million. Queen and Slim made $6.53 million to finish 4th in its sophomore weekend. 3rd place went to Ford v Ferrari, $6.54 million, give it a domestic total of $91 million. Knives Out took 2nd for the 2nd straight weekend, earning $14.2 million for a 10-day total of $63 million. Frozen 2 topped the chart for the 3rd straight weekend. $34.7 million pushed the animated sequel's domestic total to $338 million worldwide. It's made more than $900 million.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us again tonight. I'm Holly Kellum.